Hey, what's going on? It's Scott. If you work in law enforcement, you absolutely know the importance of showing up prepared for court. However, just like many other areas of law enforcement, there are perishable skills if you don't practice and continuously train and seek education. Court is no different. So, in this video, I am interviewing longtime prosecutor with the Clark County DA's office in Las Vegas, Nevada, Jessica Walsh. She's also a police legal instructor with Blue to Gold training. She's going to give you monumental advice, prepare you for the cross examinations, and touch on report writing as well. Let's get right into my interview with Jessica Walsh.
What are some of the challenges that police officers face when preparing for court testimony that you've seen throughout your career in working with law enforcement?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is they don't understand what the word prepared is. They often think, I'll just read my report and I'll be good to go, right? And they get the sense if you say, ask someone, hey, what's the most important thing about testifying? And they'll tell you, just tell the truth, right? So know your facts, just tell the truth. But then I always ask an officer, have you ever tried to convince a wife or a girlfriend or a mother or a husband, boyfriend, friend, best friend that you were telling the truth and they just never believed you, no matter how much evidence you had in your favor, no matter how persuasive or convincing you were? And everyone, literally everyone will go, yeah, that's happened. And that's exactly what's going on in a jury trial, right? So it's not just telling the truth, it's telling the truth in a way that will allow others to believe you and want to believe you, right? So be prepared is more than just be ready, right? So I think that's the biggest challenge that I see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, when it comes to that, let's dive into that a little bit more. What are some techniques that you give to officers to convey it well? I mean, in addition to just state the truth.
Right. Right. Say the truth, obviously, is a big one.
Right.
But I think the hardest thing for an officer to understand when you walk through those courtroom doors, you're an independent witness, right? You are not there to convict this guy. You're not there to make sure this guy goes to prison. You're not there on behalf of the prosecution, even. You are an independent witness. And so if you can leave your emotion out of it in terms of your reactions to the questions, right? The state's going to ask you a question. Those are usually easy, right? Sometimes the state will get into an area where you don't really don't want to be in, but you just have to answer the question, right? Just answer the question that's asked. And when the defense gets up there, you just answer those questions, same as you're answering for the state, right? And so that's the biggest piece of advice that I can give an officer is remember that you're independent, even though you put, your blood, sweat, and tears into your investigation. Once you go through those doors, you no longer have a dog in the fight.
Yeah, solid advice. When it comes to officers leaving their emotions at the door and answering questions,
Mm-hmm.
what do you tell officers when it comes to if they get asked a question and they don't know the answer or they forgot, like they legitimately forgot? Like I
Yeah.
was brought into a DWI trial that was from a case, a DWI arrest 4 years prior. So what do you tell officers if they can't remember or they don't know the answer to it?
Yeah. If they can't remember, if they don't know the answer, number one, I'm going to tell them next time, make sure you read your report a little bit more. Be a little bit more prepared. Go over your body worn camera if you need to. That will really help you remember the investigation. And then when you hit the stand, it's common to forget a detail or two. Um, as long as it's a minor detail and it's not, hey, what was the name of the suspect? I forget. That's going to go over really bad, right?
Yeah,
So make
yeah.
sure, right? Make sure you know your information. But if you forget, just tell the prosecutor, or the defense attorney, or the judge, I don't remember, right? If you never knew it, just tell the judge, I never knew that, right? I never had that information. If you don't remember, say they ask you, what's the VIN number? What's the VIN number on that vehicle? Even a plate number. Nobody's going to expect you to remember that, right? So you say, I don't remember. The attorney is going to ask you, would looking at your report help refresh your recollection? You'll say yes. And then they'll probably ask you some timing questions about how long after this event was the report written. It's usually within a few hours. And then they're going to let you refer to your report and continue on and either read the VIN number or provide whatever testimony it is that you're now remembering, right? So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just glad you covered that because I remember in the very beginning, I was lucky to get good training officers, and then in rookie school had good instructors. They just made it very clear. one, you don't lie,
Yeah.
because that's it. Your career's over if you're lying on the stand.
Yes.
And then two, it's okay if you quote look bad. Just be honest, say I don't remember, and that's
Right.
okay. Rather than trying to say something very vague and then just
Yeah.
look ridiculous while you're trying to rehash whatever you can and remember what you can. It's okay to say I don't
Yeah.
remember. So I'm glad you covered that. It's
absolutely okay to say you don't remember. And also you have to remember the defense attorney's job is to make you look ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh
right.
yeah.
And so they
100%.
might be asking you a question. Yeah, for sure. They might be asking you a question, not to get the answer, but to get you to say, not to get you to say, I don't know, but to get you to say something stupid. So for example, a real case in California, the defense attorney was asking about all these things that happened in undercover operation. People were stealing money from homeless folks. And so he had the officer who was undercover on the stand, and he's going through the questions of, you were sitting down, you were in a park, you were next to a tree. What kind of tree was it? And he goes, it was a wooden one.
Oh gosh. Oh no. No,
It was a wooden one.
that's the I have to answer it. Just say
I
I
have to
don't
answer.
know. Oh
Yeah,
my
I don't know.
gosh.
Just say I don't know, right? Don't be so eager to answer every single question that you feel like you have to come up, right? You say I don't know. If it's in the report, it'll help. If it's what kind of tree was it, they're gonna move on. Yeah.
Oh no, I feel bad laughing about it, but I mean, you hit a good point. I mean, you really did.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, I was the laughing stock of a courtroom one time where honestly we were in the jury box for district court, and you know how the officers sit in the jury box, and I was daydreaming. I dozed off because court was never interesting or fun for me. But anyway, a defendant that I had arrested on something came up and pled guilty. So I just, once I heard plead guilty, I kind of just dozed away, daydreaming. And the judge said something and then looked at me and said, Officer Medlin, what do you have to say? And I thought he said something like, do you have anything else to add or something like that? And I was like, no, we're good. And an officer looked at me and said, he wasn't asking for your permission, Medlin. and I mean, in front of all these people. And I was just like, oh, well, whatever. It is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
it's, how many times have you testified?
Oh gosh, through my career, I testified
a
good amount of times. Yeah. Yeah. I was in a county where, for the most part, we didn't have DWI trials as much as other counties neighboring us. But yeah, there were a fair amount of trials in district court. And I remember I went into the Superior Court a handful of times, and all of them in Superior Court were cases that were a few years prior. And that's why I'm really valued making sure to take good notes, because in my opinion, when I was on scene and when I was doing the report, that was my court prep right then and there, not, while I was getting things ready while looking at the docket,
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a good point to tell young officers your trial preparation begins in the field, right? It begins with what you choose to document, what you choose to document about what's there and what isn't there, about what you did, what you didn't do. And the more you testify, the more you realize the types of questions that are going to be asked of you. And you will see new opportunities in the field to document. So you close those holes, right? You close the gaps in the investigation, and the defense attorney won't, kick in the door and come in with a line of questioning that makes you look ridiculous. So it really does start in the field, your courtroom testimony.
Oh, 100%. So do you have any kind of quick tips about what an officer should look for while out on calls, and what to document and how to document, and when it comes to evidence as well? And I know this is very broad, but whatever comes to mind, and we can hit the highlights.
I would say the highlights are, for me, documenting what you did not do and why is something I think a lot of officers skip over, right? Did you get DNA from the gun? No, I did not. Was there a reason? We pulled it out of the sewer. That's going to be the reasons already documented in your report, right? Did you interview the witness? No, I didn't. Versus leaving the question unanswered, right? Did you interview the witness? Well, if you tell me you didn't, I know you didn't. If you tell me you didn't because he hopped on a flight back home to Jersey from Vegas, now I know somebody needs to reach out to him, right? Did you do a search warrant on the home? No, we didn't. So really looking at the report, and as you get experience, you'll start seeing what questions am I going to ask as a defense attorney to ridicule my investigation, and you'll slowly start closing those gaps just through a couple extra sentences in your report.
Yeah, a couple of extra sentences. And I do find that the more calls I was on, the more experience I got, the easier it was to think like, okay, if I cover this, I'll know the defense attorney is going to be looking at it. So let's get that covered.
Right.
You know, let's get that kind of stuff documented.
Right.
Man, I miss being a cop. But anyway,
it's fun. Yeah, being in court is fun.
It was, and I really enjoyed the in-depth cases. I hated the paperwork behind them, but I did enjoy
For
them,
sure.
particularly working with the district attorney's office to make sure they were as thorough as could be. Let's kind of go back a little bit, and you know, you said the defense attorney a lot of times will try to make us look ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous, and so what do you recommend officers do to maintain their composure and continue to be able to answer the questions logically and effectively?
So it goes back to remembering your role in the courtroom, right? You're that independent fact teller. So if they ask you 100 times the same question, the answer is always yes, sir, no, sir. Remembering that you are there answering the attorney's questions, but you're talking to the jury or the judge. And so when the defense or prosecution or judge asks you a question, you look at them. Most importantly, you listen. Listen to the question. Don't start thinking of your answer when they first ask it, because they might bury something in the middle of it. Listen to the whole question, pause, take a beat, compose yourself. Then you look at the jury or the judge and you just simply answer the question. Keep it as short as you can. On cross-examination, keep it to yes or no. And if you remember your role, it should help you not to get emotional and lose your composure, right? Because I see that with most officers when they testify, the defense starts picking at their investigation little by little by little, and you just see the heat rising. And if you just remember, I'm just here to say what I did or didn't do. Like this isn't, I'm not getting graded. This isn't the teacher. I'm not going to get, an A or an F when I walk out. It doesn't matter. What's done is done. And so just say it like it is, right?
Yeah. And me personally, if they called me out on a mistake, like one attorney called me out on not checking a box on an affidavit for a DWI case. I mean, I completed I did the fill in the blank on that line, but I didn't check the box. And he called that out. I owned it. I mean, it's just like,
yes,
yeah, I didn't let it. I know what he was trying to do. He's trying to get me all thrown off for the rest of the case. Fortunately, it didn't work. But,
yes.
But yeah, I mean, you're right. That nitpicky stuff that they'll try to do. And it's just like officers in the field, you can't take things personal. I think it's the same way in the courtroom because there was an attorney I went to high school with who sometimes would, do cross testimony or examine me and ask me questions. I mean, she got into it. She was intense, but after the trial, we were just back to being people that went to high school together. So it's never anything. I mean, it shouldn't be anything personal, in my opinion.
Right. It shouldn't be anything personal. And whenever I see an officer getting very, very frustrated, or before court, if I know, hey, your investigation is going to be attacked, if your credibility is going to be under attack, I tell them, if you were accused of a crime, would you want your defense attorney to shred the investigation just to make sure? And usually they start remembering the point of our justice system, right? Yeah. It's the point of cross-examination is to make sure your investigation was completed without trampling someone's civil rights. And the point is they're trying to bring out little bits and pieces to make sure you did your job right. And if you were falsely accused, you would want them to do that. You'd want them to rock that job, right? Yeah. But we did our investigation. You're a great cop. Own it. Like you said before, own it. You make a mistake, say it. You didn't do something in the field, say it. Don't hide from it. Don't shy away from it. And often a lot of defense attorneys will do that on purpose to get a rise out of you, right? So I was watching a DUI trial online once where the suspect driver had an open container in the vehicle. It was like alcohol in a Wendy's cup. And so the defense was trying to get him cornered into, you destroyed evidence, destroying evidence is a crime. It's a felony, and you did that, right? And the poor officer just sat there like, well, yeah, yes, I did. And when he got to the point of, well, are you telling this jury you committed a felony? He goes, well, I guess if you apply the facts to the law. And it disrupted the defense attorney's entire line of question thereafter, because he thought, no way a cop is going to admit calmly that he
Right.
committed a crime, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think it'll ever get that serious. But just remember that most of the time they're doing it to you. And so you take the power back from them, right? Just very calmly say, yes, I did destroy that cup. And then your prosecutor will say, was that following policy? Well, yeah, I can't impound an open, Wendy's cup full of alcohol.
Right.
But that trial was great because the defense attorney was, he was mumbling, he was fumbling with his paperwork. He was like, well, let's talk about the marijuana. Well, wait, there wasn't any marijuana. Let's go over here. Let's go. He was completely wrecked. He had no idea what to do next. And that's what I like to see officers be able to do. Take that power away from the defense attorney by not falling for their games.
Wow. Yeah, this is great. I'm so glad that I'm interviewing you, and we might never know who listens to this and benefits from it and wins a case because they listen to your advice right now. This is awesome. Any training you recommend officers get regarding court prep and courtroom testimony? I mean, what do you recommend so far as what they should look for education wise?
So courtroom testimony training is very, very limited. So we at Blue to Gold have the best courtroom testimony class in the nation. And so I would highly recommend checking that out. I created it. I put it together. I tested it on a lot of officers, both locally and around the country, to bring the answers to those questions they need to know, right? It's easy to call a prosecutor and say, hey, train me. What do I need to know to go to court? And they're going to say one or two things, right? But we really dig deep into what is everything you need to know, because it might be something small, but it might be something nobody ever told you about. Like, wear your uniform if you're in patrol. Always wear your uniform. Don't wear a suit. You're not a detective. Wear your uniform, right? Mm-hmm. So our courtroom testimony class, it's bulletproof courtroom testimony. If you take that either online or through one of the live classes, you will be very prepared to walk into whatever the defense is going to throw at you in trial.
Outstanding. And I have interviewed Zach Miller with Blue to Gold, and now interviewing you, I have been nothing but impressed with those at Blue to Gold. Very much so. And so can you discuss the importance and the necessity, in my opinion, for officers to work with the DA's office when it comes to cases?
Yeah, you have to be one-on-one with your prosecutor. If you spend your time fighting each other, you're never going to be a cohesive unit in front of the jury or in front of the court, even though they're not your attorney. They're not there to represent you, and you're not there to convict the guy. We're all on the same side, right? We have the same goal. So meeting with your prosecutor before you ever testify, especially in front of a jury, is really key. They're going to tell you what areas of testimony they're going to get into. They're going to tell you, hey, I think we might have an issue in this area or that area. We could talk about it. And then if there is an unfortunate, policy violation, I forgot to turn my body worn camera on, up to whatever, significant constitutional issue there may be, you guys could discuss that beforehand, and the officer will be better prepared when those questions start being peppered at you from the defense attorney. You're prepared for it. So speaking with your prosecutors is very, very important. And I would also suggest not just at the time you go to testify, get to know your prosecutors early enough. Call them when you have a case that you're just not sure what happened. Why aren't you going forward on this? There's a lot of things that we see that you don't see until we point it out to you. And then once you know to look for it, you'll start seeing it. So talking with your prosecutors will make you that much better of an officer, not only in testifying, but in knowledge of the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And all right, little specific question for you. Say an officer is in district court, and I mean, where I worked, it was nothing for the attorneys to take you to the little back room and see what you had on the case or for their client's sake and all that kind of stuff.
Oops, sorry.
What if the attorney takes you back there and says, can I see your notes from the case to see all that you have? Do you tell officers, hey, share everything you have? Or do you say, tell them to tell the attorneys or ask the attorneys, well, what do you need to know? Which approach do you take?
Yeah, if you write something down, we have to provide it. So if you take, quick handwritten notes and you use those to turn into your report, those aren't the notes that we're saving in the case, right? And so the only notes you should have are those that are documented in your initial report or any supplemental. Don't get in the habit of taking two sets of notes, right? Because your report are your notes. If there is something that is in a note that you don't want to share, you probably should have talked to your prosecutor about that beforehand, because it's definitely going to be something that we're going to have to bring forward, right? Because we have this concept of Brady. If it's information that's material to the guilt or punishment of your suspect, we have to turn that over, right?
Yeah.
We can't play hide the ball. So I don't like an officer hiding from something. Your attorneys are very good at what they do. They just can't work with evidence they don't know about, right? So no matter what you have, talk with them about it. And I'm definitely in the field of there shouldn't be any other notes.
Okay, good deal. And I'm glad you covered that. And yes, I remember they brought all of us to a DA's meeting one time, and they said the whole transparent thing. They were like, disclosure, you have to share things. You have to, but particularly on the stand when the case is in court, you can't hide anything. And they said, if you do, we will charge you. I mean, that's serious business. So we don't want officers' egos or the fear of looking bad to get in the way. Like, share it. It's out. I mean, it is essential. So one other thing, just so we make sure officers don't, violate someone's constitutional rights or, totally screw up the case because they violated someone's rights. What are the top things you look for regarding someone's rights and in most cases that officers are charging people? What do you look for?
If I'm going to review it to charge, I really look at the reason for the stop, and if there's a search, why you did it. Those are the two things that I find are not articulated enough in the report, right? And if it's not in the report, I know you've heard before that statement. If it's not in the report, it didn't happen. Well, it might have happened, but if I have to go into court and we have to prove it happened, you now put us behind. We have a lot more to overcome to get our judge or our jury to believe what it was that we left out of the report, right? And so I'm looking for that articulation. I'm looking for that officer to strive for 5 reasons why they did what they did, right? And it's usually in the reasonable suspicion area that we run into a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so I tell my officers when they get confused, like, well, how much do I include? What do I put down? Number 1, we tell them try and get 5, strive for 5. And number 2, I tell them, pretend I denied your case. And you call me and you say, why'd you deny my case, Walsh? What are we doing? And I say, your pat down was terrible. I think it's a violation. Every single time I've had a conversation like that, an officer will say, but there was furtive movements, or he was looking from side to side, or he bladed off from the car. Every time I had that conversation, there's always more the officer can tell me about why they did what they did, just never in the report. So in the field, like we said, your preparation starts in the field. If you're articulating reasonable suspicion, stop and think, if they deny this, what else could I say? Because there's always something. So making sure it's articulated in the report is absolutely critical.
Okay, good deal. So you are of the opinion, I for lack of a better phrase, that an officer should write their narrative in a sense where it's a novel and someone can actually put themselves in there and see what the officer saw and went through while they were on scene or whatever.
Yes, and we have a class on report writing as well, bulletproof report writing. And it goes over all of those ways that we can help you write a bulletproof report. And that's essentially what it is, a report that nobody's going to be able to, crumble with their questions and pick it apart. But you can't save anything. You can't save a good chunk of juicy information for later. We have to lay our cards out up front, good or bad, right?
Yeah.
It is what it is. Lay it out, right?
Yeah, well, definitely lay it out also because it's, for most officers, it's on body camera now. I mean, if you withhold something, it's going to be discovered eventually. Please don't let your ego get in the way. All right. My last question here is mainly for the newer officers, which a lot of people on my YouTube audience in particular, they're new to the profession or interested in getting in it. Sometimes you can put a lot of effort into a case. And I'm speaking from experience on this. I mean, sometimes we put our lives in danger and we did the best we can and we arrest someone off probable cause, but say the case sometimes was pled from, or just, automatically through the DA's office, taken from a felony to a misdemeanor plead, or sometimes you go to trial and it just doesn't work out. It's a not guilty verdict.
Yeah.
It can be upsetting, but what do you tell officers so that they can, not lose their cool?
It is a very frustrating thing. And it is frustrating for us as prosecutors as well. But what I tell them is if you have something significantly invested in the case, I should be able to see it from the report, or we should be able to have a conversation about it. But at the end of the day, our system is limited by the resources that we have, same as you guys in the field, right? And so the more you learn how to efficiently document things and do your job, the more efficient you're going to be at, presenting a case that is going to easily go forward. Unfortunately, if we charged every single case officers arrested, we would be in trial for years. Out here in Las Vegas, they did a study that said if we took to trial every case that was arrested in a 1 year period, we would be in trial for 15 years without doing any of the other years as trials, right? And so even though it's super frustrating, it's, don't get discouraged by it, right? You can always take something away from the case. If you wrote an amazing report, you had a great investigation and the case didn't go anywhere, you learned a bit or two about documenting a case and putting it forward and doing a good investigation. You're always going to be able to take something away from what you did.
Yeah, absolutely. Jessica, I cannot thank you enough. Obviously, we just kind of skimmed the surface over this last half hour. You gave tremendous advice, but officers really need to look more into education. So for finding out how they can be trained by you through Blue to Gold, where do they need to go? What do they need to do?
So go to bluetogolds.com, go to our university. The bulletproof courtroom testimony class is recorded. You could take it from your living room, sign up for the university, take the class, or go look for any of the locations to see if we're coming to your area. If we're not, and you really want to take the class, reach out to us and we'll see what we can try and get set up in your area for sure.
Outstanding. Well, thank you again.